Welcome to the Pregnancy Loss Podcast, the place I created for moms like us. Pregnancy loss is all-encompassing and creates an overarching theme that runs through our lives forever. We have to learn to live with and beside the grief of losing our baby. We have to learn how to live again, how to parent again, how to engage and interact and be social again, how to communicate effectively to connect with our spouses and significant others. We have to find who we are now. I'm here to empower and inspire you to live a life even with our unique circumstances. We cannot change what happened, but we can grow and use that strength and resilience to create a life that we love. I'm here to share everything I know about grief, motherhood, loss, marriage, friendship, and parenting. I'm here to encourage you to find the beautiful side of grief, the side where we don't have to isolate ourselves or suppress the need to share stories, the side where you have moms just like you to support and encourage you. The side where we become the best versions of ourselves, not in spite of our loss, but thanks to it. Pregnancy loss is devastating, but it can also be an opportunity to reflect on who we were and who we want to become. So join me every Tuesday for a new episode on the Pregnancy Loss Podcast. Let's jump in. Today on the podcast, I am so excited to introduce Barb Higgins. Barb is an author who had a baby at 57 and lost her 13-year-old daughter. From these experiences, she was inspired to write her book, Motherland, which just came out, you guys. A teacher and grief coach, Barb is skilled at taking life's tragedies and using them to fuel her everyday experiences. Ever since Barb emailed me, I have been listening to her podcast. She also has one called 1,000 Tiny Little Steps, and it is just her journey through life. And she is such a storyteller, and the way that she tells her story, she is just, you connect to her instantly. She's so authentic and funny and real, and I think you guys will really appreciate this conversation. So let's jump in. Hi, Barb. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is great.
Yeah.
Yay.
So everybody heard the intro, and I would just love you to, I don't know how to sum up your story, but just tell us about yourself and like all the things.
all the things. Okay. Well, all the things. My story is a relatively unique story, but I also think lots of things I've gone through are things a lot of people go through, but we don't like to talk about them. Does that make sense? So I'm, your very standard, typical New England mom, wife, teacher, coach. I live a very normal life, nothing outrageous about it whatsoever. However, within all of that, I've had an amazing athletic career. I've had an incredible child journey, with both ends of the spectrum, utter tragedy and complete joy. And I think my whole life is kind of that way. So as a mother, I didn't even think I would ever have kids, quite honestly. I was always going to be the crazy aunt. I come from a family of real generational abuse, and my sister and I decided, that's it, we're stopping it. We're just not going to have kids. And she hasn't. And I think she goes back and forth with feeling good about that. But I wasn't going to. And it wasn't until I was 36 and became pregnant with baby Gordy. And he was my first pregnancy. And I didn't know I was pregnant with him for 14 weeks. I was on the pill at the time. I was working out heavily. I wasn't even thinking that I could potentially be pregnant. And I'm, living my life, and, it was sort of May turning into June. And I'm like, suddenly do I have boobs, and why am I gaining weight, and why am I outrageously moody? Like, I had all of these things happening to me, and I couldn't put my finger on what it might be. And I woke up early one morning, and I felt this big giant like rock in my stomach, and I'm on my tummy in the bed, and I'm like, uh-oh, I think I know what this is. Like what? So I had to wait for the pharmacy to open, and I went down and got a pregnancy test. And I mean, the urine hadn't even made its way to the window yet when the lines were popping up, it was just like, bam, totally
That's
pregnant.
How pregnant you were.
So, yes. Well, I was 14 weeks pregnant at that time. And, with pregnancy tests the way they are now, you can know you're pregnant before you're late for your period. So I remember, Kenny and I had just been together, not even a year at that time. I was on the pill. But what I didn't know at the time was that if you take antibiotics, you negate the pill. And so I had been really sick the month of March, and I've been on antibiotics for about 2 weeks. So there you go. Amoxicillin and low estrin are not a good mix. So I went and had all sorts of. I know, it's like I'm a health. Since then, I got certified to teach health, and that's one of the things I tell the high school age girls all the time. Look, if you're using birth control, please know certain things can totally interfere with its ability to work. And I didn't know that at all at the time.
Yeah.
So by the time I found out I was pregnant, I was, done with my first trimester essentially. So I had a bunch of testing. I was 36. That's considered a geriatric pregnancy, which that word just makes me laugh, especially because 36 seems pretty young to me now. And so I had all sorts of testing, and that baby had a really significant heart defect. And so the 10 weeks that I knew I was pregnant with him, it was test after test after test and heartbreak after heartbreak after heartbreak. And I lost him at 24 weeks. So went to the hospital and delivered. And that was a very beautiful experience. I have to say that the hospital was tremendous. It was a traumatic experience, but yes, they were so good to us. And so we donated his little body to Philadelphia Children's Hospital because they have a really incredible cardiac research unit there. And so he had just several things wrong with that teeny tiny heart. And, I hadn't been pregnant with him long enough to feel like, oh no, I better bury him here. I want to go visit him all the time. I know that might sound coarse, but I only knew him for 10 weeks. And the whole time I knew him, I knew he might not live. So it was it was a relationship that was quite different than with my others. What baby Gordy gave me, though, was the desire to be a mother. The 10 weeks I got to know that I was pregnant with him and interact with him and see him on ultrasound screens and feel him kick and then, deliver him made me realize that, okay, I guess I do want to have babies. And so we donated him to Philadelphia. About a year after this experience, I received a letter from that hospital with an autopsy report and a summary and an unbelievable letter of thanks and gratitude from the staff there, because it's one thing to look at blood work and look at an ultrasound picture, but to see right there in 3D what you're looking at, they were able to come up with some tools to fix the heart enough to allow the baby to survive 9 months and be born. So babies with the same heart defect that Gordy can now have a chance of living, surviving a pregnancy and being born. So it gave me incredible relief, sort of, that this horrible experience for me would at least help other moms that might have a baby with this terrible heart defect. That story comes back when we get into Jack's story. So then my motherhood journey was very standard and typical. Gracie came in 2001, Molly in 2003. Easy pregnancies. One of the things that weighs on me sometimes in my grief journey around losing Molly is that I had every test imaginable during my pregnancy with Gracie because I had lost baby Gordy and she was perfectly fine and healthy. So when I was pregnant with Molly, the wonderful hospital, the same hospital that I delivered Gordy at, asked, did I want to have all the high risk testing again? And I said no, because I felt like, that was then, this is now. Gracie was healthy and fine. This will be fine. Had I had a lot of that testing, Molly's brain tumor was a fetal cell tumor, so it would have potentially shown up had I done all of that testing that I did with Gracie.
Is that
so? Of course,
something that would have shown up on the ultrasound or blood work that would have shown up?
I believe it would have shown up in the ultrasound. So because it showed up in a CAT scan, normally non-cancerous tumors don't show in CAT scans. When they finally did a CAT scan on Molly, it showed up. So it would have shown up in an ultrasound. Yeah. So that was heart-wrenching because, I didn't do all those things. And this is what moms do. We question every move we make over and over. So
blame ourselves.
Yes, big time. So raising Gracie and Molly, very, typical little girls. They loved each other, really, really close, loved to dance and all of that. And about 6 months before Molly died, she started having terrible headaches. We took her to the doctors again and again. And as is standard fare, I think, sometimes with young girls and teenage girls, everything is attributed to hormones, drama, stress. And Molly had gone from a chunky, sort of solid build to alarmingly skinny. Now, I was alarmingly skinny all my life, always accused of being, an anorexic, and I wasn't. I was just wicked skinny. So I just assumed she's skinny like me. Hindsight now tells me that her appetite was really altered by the growth of the tumor. So the tumor was in her brainstem. And so from about this time of year, Christmas, this is when she really started to have headaches in 2015 until her death in May of 2016. Migraines, vomiting, tingly tongue, tingly face. And we just went to the doctors again and again and again. And every time we went, they had some very logical explanation for what might be happening. But it just wasn't getting better, and it was escalating. And there was this just staunch refusal to do any imaging. I'm like, just do an x-ray of her head. Like, just do a CAT scan. Like, these things don't take all that long. Finally, at the end of April, we had gone like once a week. She was having these episodes. She'd wake up in the morning vomiting and not able to move. And then about 2 or 3 hours later, she'd be completely fine. It would just end, and then she'd be fine. And she'd have it a good couple of weeks, and then she would have it again. We took her to the ER. She laid in that ER for 16 hours. They gave her medicine for pain. She fell asleep, and she essentially never woke up. And then the tumor burst inside of her head and killed her. So 16 hours in an ER, and she died there. And had they just done a CAT scan at any time, they could have at least alleviated the pressure and gotten her to a bigger hospital to remove the tumor. They removed the tumor. They did, once it burst and she was sort of on life support, they took the tumor out and were hoping that she would wake up, that maybe the damage wasn't so disastrous, but it was in her brainstem, and that's all your basic body functions. So, it wasn't like up in the top of your head where it's vision or hearing or balance or those kinds of things. It was breathing and chewing and digestion, all the basic body functions. So she spent a few days on life support. We had a massive amount of people come say goodbye to her. And then we had to remove her from life support and, bury her and start a life without her. So my 2 child loss journeys were both actually quite brief in terms of knowing the illness. I didn't have, I had really just 7 days of Molly, dying and then having to pull her off life support and burying her. It wasn't like I had months and months of knowing she was going to die. It was very sudden. In my whole pregnancy that I was aware of with Gordy, he was sick. So in some ways, it's a similar sort of time frame. But I will say, as traumatic and tragic as the loss of Gordy was, and at the time it was horrible. I was not okay for months and months. I'm still not okay with Molly, and it's 7 years later. It's a different beast when you've got 13 years with somebody and you've invested in all of those memories and the future you think you're going to have and all of that. So that's where Jack arrives. I would say 2 or 3 months after losing Molly, I started having these really random dreams. And trust me, at that time I was having a lot of dreams. But I started having this persistent dream that I was supposed to have a baby. And I would have it 2 or 3 times a week. And sometimes it was super intense. And sometimes it was a dream where I was just sitting with a group of people having a conversation and all, like I had a dance mom dream and we're all on a porch and we're drinking wine. And they're all saying, Barb, have a baby. You should do it. Drink this kind of wine. Like, and I'd wake up like, okay, I guess I'm supposed to have this baby. Now, because of Molly's, the circumstances around her death, we hired an attorney and were engaged in a lawsuit. And that was a 2-year experience. So I started having the dream to have the baby. Kenny and I went through some testing by myself. When I realized I probably could do it, that's when I went to Kenny. Hey, Kenny, I've been having these dreams and I have a question for you. And so he looked at me, and he said, okay, sure. And so then he started coming with me to all these doctor's appointments. So we got the okay. And trust me, at my age, I was 53 at the time, which seems very young now. The testing you have to go through to make sure that you're healthy enough to do this is extensive. You have to have an update mammogram. You have to have an up-to-date colonoscopy. You have to have an up-to-date EKG. You have to have up-to-date blood work. You spend 2 hours with a therapist, having a conversation about family life and your history, and and so of course we had the death of Molly, which adds a huge X factor to my ability to be a stable parent, right? Because it's not like I'm just making this baby by myself. I have a doctor in an office who's signing off on the fact that they're willing to do this, and that's a lot of liability when you think about it. And so we went through all of that testing, and then you have to they fill you up with hormones, and they test your uterine lining and how thick it gets. They do what's called a hysteroscopy. They take a little bit of your uterine lining out and test it for things. And after all of that, it was maybe winter into spring of 2017. So coming up on a year after Molly died, I got the okay. We are willing to do this. Of course, then they put the price tag on it. And I still wasn't back to work, and we were barely functioning as a family still. And so we basically said, we'll be back. We have to put this on hold. We'll be back. So 2017 into 2018 was just the lawsuit, just finalizing the lawsuit, all of the horrible depositions and testimony and all that goes into an event like that. We ended up settling, which is typically what happens with medical malpractice. It's not very often that you go to court. Typically the hospital's insurance company just wants it to go away. So it just becomes a money thing, which is ugly. So we settled in June of 2018, which of course saved us financially now because we have this lawsuit. So I hadn't had the dream for about a year. I looked up at the sky and said, look, I did everything I can. I can't do this baby right now. Stop hounding me. And the dreams went away, completely went away. We settled the lawsuit at the end of June. Mid-July rolls around and I have the dream. So I wake up and I'm like, hot dang, it came back. So I'm sitting on the porch and I'm having my coffee, and Kenny, shuffles on down, and I'm like, hey, guess what dream I had last night? He went, the baby dream. I'm like, yes. So I called the doctor. So let me also say, one of the byproducts of grief for me was the ginormous amount of medication I was taking. So I have a mouth condition called trigeminal neuralgia, which is an incredibly painful nerve condition. So I was on 3 medications for that, a nerve block and 2 anti-seizure meds, because the condition stems from a nerve center in your brain. None of those can be taken when you're pregnant. I was on every sort of anti-anxiety, antidepressant, anti-panic, help me sleep, help me wake up. I was really 5 or 6 different medications. I think about it now, and I don't know how I functioned, except I think I was so distraught that they sort of made me normal. But I had to go off all of that medication. I have a new and healthy and profound respect for hardcore drug addicts that come clean, because I was moderated. I went to my doctor and we laid it all out, how I could get off all those medicines. This all started with returning to Dr. Cardoni, my wonderful Italian IVF doctor, who I will love until the day I die. And he was happy to have us back. All my testing was up to date and current. But when he looked at my medication list, he's like, this has to go. And that was along this, right? So one by one, my primary care doctor was phenomenal, this Dr. Laura. And we sat down with a big calendar and all my medications on the table in front of us. And we just wrote it out, like just with a pencil on a calendar. What medicines I took, how many per day. And then we just, all right, this week, you will cut down on this one for 2 weeks. By the time we're almost done with that, we'll begin cutting down on this one. By the time you're off the first one, you'll be almost off the second. It was a huge process. Started August 1st, finished December 1st. It took me August, September, October, November, 4 months to come off Xanax and Lamictal and lorazepam and all of those drugs, plus the Topramate and Topramax and Tegretol and gabapentin, all of the things I was on for my brain, right? For my heart and my soul and everything else. That was not an experience I would wish upon anybody. It was really difficult. I heard the ocean in my ears for weeks. I felt tingly and numb. I wanted to be asleep in the daytime. I was awake all night. It was really, really one of the most difficult things I've ever done. I get to December. So I realize now that the pain in my face is going to be far too intense. to be off this medication for a pregnancy. Like, no way can this happen. So I find a doctor in New York City who specializes in trigeminal neuralgia. And so I email him, explain my situation, that I want to have a baby. Would he be willing to look at me? And he said, sure, have an MRI with contrast. He gave me this whole prescription. So I went to my local neurologist, gave her the email from the guy in New York City, Dr. Eskandar, and went for an MRI. So I come home from the MRI, it's maybe December 10th or 11th, like really just 2018. So 5 years from like right now. And Kenny and I are having coffee at the kitchen table and the phone rings and I look and it says Concord Neurological Associates. And I just look at him because you never get a phone call an hour after an imaging test with good news, ever.
Yeah.
If it's good news, there's no phone call. So I just thought, oh, what now? So I answer the call and sure enough, they found 3 brain tumors in my head. So Molly died of a brain tumor. Kenny's on kidney dialysis still because he's so sick, needing a kidney transplant. Poor Gracie's a senior in high school. Like, all she wants is a normal senior year. We're still reeling from the loss of Molly, and now I have like brain tumors in my head. So I went down to New York City with one of my good friends, Deb. She went down with me. Kenny stayed home with Gracie because it was, just too much to handle all at once. And he looked at the MRI, and he was amazing. He took my hands in his hands and just said, "You tell Gracie we'll take care of this. You're going to be fine." He could tell because it was the type of, my blood work was normal, so I wasn't fighting a cancerous tumor. So he knew it was likely benign. But I will say, when I went down in January for the tumor removal, he thought it would be a little teeny hole in my head and just take it right out. And when I woke up from that surgery, if you look on my Facebook, you'll see it in there. I was completely bald. I had it. Yeah.
I can't believe you went.
Yeah. I woke up and Kenny's crying and I'm like, why are you crying? I'm just out of it. Because he had been at dialysis all day. They set up his kidney dialysis for him down there. We're staying in this nice hotel. I mean, I'm in the hospital. And he comes to see me thinking that, I'll look normal with like a little hole in my head. And I'm like, black eye. And yeah. So that was a profound experience. And so all of the beginning of 2019 was all about fixing me, getting the tumors out. The little ones that were on the other side of my head needed to be radiated. That was a Hannibal Lecter experience. They had me in this like face mask, like, oh my God, bolted to a bed. Yeah, it was really, that was, a lot of Xanax for that, by the way. Calm down.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Oh God. They played great 80s music for me too. I said, just play me cheesy 80s songs and I'll be fine. So there's all this 80s music blasting in the room and I'm lying there. So that worked fine. And then in April, I had another brain surgery, another craniotomy to fix the nerve condition. So from December 10th to April 10th, I had MRI, doctor's appointment, tumor removal, tumor radiation, mouth repair, like in a 4-month, December to April. So then we go to Disney to recover. I'm bald, I'm doing terrible. And one of Gracie and Molly's really good friends is on life support and ends up passing away from anaphylaxis from a peanut allergy. She ate food with peanuts in it at a restaurant and didn't know. That family, they were a dance family, so they were very, very supportive when Molly died. They ended up giving Kenny one of that girl's kidneys. Her name is Rachel. So Kenny gets a kidney transplant from a girl named Rachel. Rachel danced in Molly's funeral. Like, we had a big memorial service for Molly that involved, that big performance. So the kidney that lives inside of Molly's dad danced at Molly's funeral. Like we talk to his kidney all the time, because how do you not, right? Hey Rach, and so now we have this miraculous thing where Kenny is healthy. He's had this transplant. I've had my head fixed. So we go back to Dr. Cardoni. Okay, we're ready. Finally. But he was just into it. He was just into it. So we start the whole process. We go through, it's all of 2018 and 2019. It was several months. We do our first IVF transfer in August of 2019, and it does not work. So I thought, okay, maybe the whole purpose of having that dream was to help me find the brain tumors. Because although they were not cancerous, the location of one of them would have been life-ending for me had it not come out. So, excuse me. Sorry.
You're fine.
So I thought, okay, I wasn't really supposed to have a baby, but Molly or whoever on the other side knew that I was never going to stop the medicine if I, and I would never have stopped the medicine, which means I never would have hurt enough to try to fix my mouth, which means I never would have found the brain tumors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I go back to Dr. Cardoni and I said, so what do you think? And he just grins at me. He's like, do you want to try again? And I'm like, yes. So he goes, so do I. And he takes a pad of paper out. He's like, it's not you. You were fine. It's him. So the Kenny's contribution to the pregnancy was pre-kidney transplant. So now he's got Rachel's kidney in there, right? And he's all healthy. So we just redid the sperm extraction and now we have this, healthy sperm, right? So we tried again. Okay. So of course our date for our transfer date was March of 2020. And what happened in March of 2020? COVID. Mm-hmm. So it just got put on the shelf. So March, April, May, June, I'm just sort of maintaining hormones. We're just sort of waiting around. And the moment that Dr. Cardoni could bring back patients, the only patients he kept through COVID were the ones that were heavily, like, couldn't stop, that were far enough in that they had to keep being seen. So he called me at the end of June and he goes, get down here. So seriously, the end of June, I went down and did the specifics for the cycle. And at the end of July, I had the IVF transfer. It was July 26th. I turned 57 on July 29th and found out I was pregnant August 5th. And then I had pregnancy number 4. So this pregnancy was secretive. Nobody knew I was pregnant at all. 0 people knew for the first 13 weeks. And then a handful of people knew from 13 weeks to 22 weeks. And then I just told people as I ran into them, I didn't do any big announcements. So I'd run into somebody with my big belly and they'd be like, what? Like, what am I looking at here? Yeah. Like, oh yeah, menopause belly.
I would have just loved to see that.
Oh, I was in like Marshall's once and a teacher friend came and she's talking away and her eyes keep going down and they keep going down. I'm like, what are you looking at? And she just stops and I'm like, I'm pregnant. And she's like, what? But it was just, people don't know what to do. You have to be so careful with commenting on people's bodies. My other favorite was I would tell somebody, hey, I have some news for you. I'm 25 weeks pregnant with a baby boy. And like, just like, gray, like stone face, like nothing, no response whatsoever. Because no one even knows what to do with that information. Like, are you making that up? Are you kidding? And then when they really get it, no, touch my belly, go ahead. There's a baby in there. It was 99% excited. Some people just thought I was nuts, but I probably am. And that's quite fine. Yep.
Not their journey.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And then at 34 weeks, I was diagnosed with preeclampsia, which thankfully it has nothing to do with age. This is where I feel like really lucky with the doctors that I had, both Dr. Cardoni and Dr. Shottery, who was my OB while I was pregnant with Jack here. Both of them said, you need to create safety wall around you. These kinds of things can really open up people for judgment. And the last thing you need is external judgment from people that are not important to you around the fact that you're pregnant and having a baby at your age. And if something were to happen, like my local OB, he was like, we tell nobody until we have done every test we can do to ensure that your baby is healthy and fine. And if something were to happen, that it's not necessarily related to age. Like, he got it. He just got it, that don't open yourself up to judgment. Have a healthy baby, then tell the world. And I have a big mouth. I likely would have told a ton of people. So, but we didn't. And I'm really grateful for that now, because we could have a very quiet birth. It wasn't like I wasn't hounded by reporters while I was delivering a baby. But it didn't take long. So I was due April 13th and Jack was born March 20th. So it wasn't way early, but early enough. But I had a super easy delivery. When you have preeclampsia, you have high blood pressure, you have protein in your urine, you have a really low platelet count. So the low platelets and the high blood pressure are the two biggest issues, because that high blood pressure can cause a stroke. Low platelets can cause hemorrhaging. So those are two things you don't mess around with. But I was perfectly fine. I went in on Friday night. They gave me magnesium for the high blood pressure. They stripped my membranes. I woke up in the morning in labor. Super easy, super quick. So I didn't even think I was in labor. I woke up and thought, maybe they never came to give me Pitocin. Maybe I'm not having a baby. I ordered breakfast. I'm eating breakfast. I'm chatting with Kenny on the phone. I'm, drinking my coffee. Like, really, I just think I'm fine.
Yeah.
And the nurse comes in. She goes, "Oh, you're feeling okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, are we not having a baby?" And she's like, "You're in labor. Your contractions are like 2 minutes apart right now." I'm like, well, okay. I don't feel them. So they weren't super strong, but they were regular. So they checked me out. They did an internal exam, and I was almost fully effaced already, and like 6 centimeters dilated, and I didn't even feel anything. So that was at 10 o'clock. So Kenny came up to the hospital, and Jack was born at 12:30. So I had basically like 90. When they broke my water, my contractions got intense, like horrible. So I was like, you know what? I want an epidural. I'm not going to hurt like this all day. And they just looked at me like, he's going to come out. Like I just hadn't been laboring. Like it was sort of like my first pregnancy where, okay, you're pregnant. Okay, you're actually halfway through your pregnancy. Like there was no time for me to formulate the fact that I was in labor because I just wasn't feeling the increase in contractions and all that. So I laid down at about 12:25, 12:30 or so. And they said, "Oh, his head's right here. Give us a push." And so I sort of gave a half-hearted push. And they said, "Oh, come on now. Next contraction, give us a good push." And so I gave a really good CrossFit, weightlifting, strong push. And he came flying out. Just one push, the one push wonder. And so there he was, little 5-pound Jack, crying and healthy and 18 inches long. And, he muckled onto my Grammy boobs and started nursing. And he had a little bit of trouble because he was early. And, but, I was actually, this is a funny little sidebar. I was nursing him, and one of the OBs was like 2 weeks away from retiring. So she was probably my age, a little older. And she came in and she scolded me for trying to nurse. You're too old to do that. I'm like, well, I grew him and I think I just pushed him out and there's milk coming out. So I'm not quite sure I'm too old to do this. So there were some of those kinds of reactions where, she's looking at me telling me you need to give that baby formula. I'm like, well, I'm not going to, but thank you.
Nope.
It was interesting. Yeah, no, I'm good. Now I did supplement with Jack, but I supplemented with breast milk from there's a Facebook group in New Hampshire called Human Milk for Human Babies. And it's this just amazing group of women. It's a constantly changing group of women who produce a ton of milk and are willing to share it. And so a friend of mine, who had a baby shortly after Jack was born, I had a whole bunch from a woman named Jackie that was moving away. Her daughter had weaned. She had a freezer full of breast milk. That milk lasted me all summer. It was the most amazing gift. Awesome. And then my friend Kelsey started, and she was great. Every Sunday she'd come over with what she'd been able to give to me, and her children would write little notes to Jack on it. "Enjoy the milk, Jack." It was just sweet. So I would nurse and pump, and then I would supplement with her milk. And she had a ton of colostrum. So she gave me a ton of that. And she's like, anytime you think he's sick or when you're all sick in your house, feed him this because, it's so full of the antibodies. So I ended up supplementing, but I was lucky enough to supplement with breast milk, I wish I had known about that when I lost baby Gordy, because my milk came pouring in, back then. I had these giant boobs for weeks, and I would have pumped and shared that milk in a heartbeat, but it was 1999 and it just wasn't, social media hadn't caught on like it is now. So there was no way to tell anyone you had this breast milk, and nobody even suggested I pump it and donate it. So that was sort of a neat change from pregnancy number 1 to pregnancy number 4, is this community of breastfeeding moms who are willing to share their milk. I have a friend who had a really impossible time nursing and didn't really want to, but she really felt she had that sort of mom guilt around formula, which we need to stop. There's a lot of things to feel guilty about. Feeding your baby formula isn't one of them. We have to honor everyone's journey. But I hooked her up with this group, and so she was able to give her baby breast milk for a year, and she just felt like empowered by that. So that was that's like a tender little story for me, because she was able to be the kind of mom she wanted to be. And I think back to 200 years ago, if you couldn't nurse your baby, you gave the baby to someone who could. You had wet nurses that nursed 1 million babies, not just their own. So that was sort of fun. So in a nutshell, that's my parenting story. I have given birth to 4 beautiful babies, 2 girls and 2 boys. I'm lucky enough to have 2 of them here with me, and I guess blessed enough to have 2 in heaven that, even though they definitely weren't here long enough, the gifts from Gordy and Molly are too many to count. And so I have to look at it that way, because looking at it the other way is just a lifetime of despair. And neither of those babies would want me to be sad all the time. I just don't think they would. I think they'd want me to be happy.
I know when I was in Molly's story, and you talked about the hundreds and hundreds of people that came.
It was amazing.
I think she's lived life, so she's had the impact on all these people or relationships or whatever. And even when you lose a baby that didn't get to live life, the impact, if you allow a community to surround you, is pretty astounding.
Yes.
I don't have a very close family. Me and my husband just don't. He was in the military, so we were off 3,000 miles away when it happened.
Right.
He was 7,000 miles away in Japan while I gave birth to Evelyn. And I had some friends. Like, I lived in the military community and I had my everyday friends and stuff like that. But when a baby dies, you don't think about that. It's kind of like when Evelyn died, I just wanted to hide. I didn't want people to see me because they knew I was pregnant, and now I wasn't, and I didn't have a baby, and I was just full of shame. And I didn't know how to reach out to other people. I didn't know anybody who had lost a baby. And this was 2019. So I mean, this is like 20 years after you had your loss, and people still aren't sharing their stories.
No.
So it's just crazy. But the community, that's the part that I'm trying to build for moms that I find.
Yes.
Because some of us really don't have them.
Yes. And what you're doing creates an unbelievably safe way to connect. When I lost Molly, one of the biggest things that helped me was social media, online groups for people that have lost children. I was on my phone all day, messaging other moms, reading the stories of others. Sometimes I just scrolled. I didn't want to comment on anything, but it just calmed me down. Like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I'm not alone. And then my favorite posts were the ones when the mothers were losing their shit, falling apart like a mess. And not that I was glad they were upset, but it made me feel so much better about my own chaotic brain and all that I was failing at and how horrible my life was and what was going on with me. Super, super helpful. I did a book launch for Motherland, the book that I wrote. And the first thing I said when I opened up that book launch, and like 90 people came, it was really, really affirming. I said, child loss is the single most isolating thing I've ever experienced. Now, I've been sexually assaulted. I've lost siblings. I've had lifelong illness. I've had a job loss. I've had lots and lots of things that could be equally as isolating. But there's something about child loss that's obscene to people. And I think it's because it's so wrong that people don't want to acknowledge it can exist. Because if you and I can lose a baby, then anyone can lose a baby, right?
And so they don't want that.
Yes.
They don't want to even think about
exactly. That. And so you get shut off. Something else I've come to realize, and I was talking about this with a woman that also does a podcast around childbirth, children and babies, and is that mothers, when you're growing a baby, you're sharing blood, you're sharing oxygen, you're sharing nutrients, you're sharing feelings and emotions, and you're neurologically connected. So the brain, your two brains lay down neurological pathways that connect. No one else in your life, in your reality, is connected to your children the way you are, because all your neural pathways respond to neural pathways in those brains. Evelyn's brain, full of neural pathways, is still a massively active piece of your brain. So the grief and the response neurologically and emotionally that mothers experience is unmatched. It's not that dads aren't sad, but there isn't a bunch of neurons going off in their heads saying, hello, baby, where are you? Where are you? And that's forever. When you learn to ride a bike, your brain learns those movements. So you don't ride a bike for 20 years. You jump back on. It takes a minute, but you get it back. baby loss, those things never calm down. You just have to reroute them or reuse them or teach yourself to use all those Evelyn responses or Molly responses or Gordy responses in a different way. And I think that sometimes is as big a piece of child loss grief for moms as the missing them and the sadness and the trauma and all of that. And again, community is a huge piece because when I talk about Molly to you, I have no anxiety that you're not going to want to hear what I have to say, because I know that anything I say to you is going to either add to your own journey or give you connection or teach you something that you're willing to hear. Whereas moms that haven't gone through this, it's just a panic, So if some mom that's never lost a baby can listen to you and I have this conversation, they can go, oh, okay. Oh, that makes sense. And then our grief and our behavior is somewhat explained, like I have a connection to you that I don't have to a lot of other moms. And that's because we have this horrible thing that happened. What a crappy way to know each other, but I love knowing you because, it's one more person that, that sits around my campfire of life. Right.
Yeah. And I feel too, with moms like us, we celebrate their babies too, or their children.
Yes.
So now, since we connected, I think about Molly and Jack and Gordy and Gracie.
Yes.
They're not my kids.
Yes.
I don't know them personally, but when I read something or think about something, I'm like, oh, and then I'll just I hope you're okay. I hope you're doing well.
Right.
I hope you're, and I'll send out cards to when I had my loss, I had people secretly reaching out to me, in my messages. They didn't want everybody else to know, but they wanted me to know. And then I would set alarms in my calendar for their birthdays. And I always send messages, and I'm like, I know this is, baby so-and-so's birth week. I'm thinking about him or her. I love you. The fact that our children won't be forgotten because other moms like us always remember.
Yes.
So that was
all the time.
Yeah. I just find that amazing. And I know
I named.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Do you want me to go? Okay. So, so Jack. So Gordy's name was Kenny's dad and my dad. So Gordon Thomas. Then I named Gracie. Her name is Ember Grace. I named her after a runner. Kenny named Molly. Her name is Mary Elizabeth, which is his mother's name. We called her Molly. When it came time for Jack, we thought, okay, we have to share the naming again. So I met two moms early on in my Molly grief, a woman named Lisa, who lost her daughter Marilee, and a woman named Brandy, who lost her son Jack. And so I said to Kenny, I know that Marilee is close to Mary, which was Molly's name, but I don't care. If this is a girl, her name will be Marilee, and you can choose the middle name. And if this is a boy, his name will be Jack, and you can choose the middle name. And of course, I reached out to these moms to say, okay, crazy me, I'm having a baby. And if it's a girl, I'd like to, and both of those moms were like, oh my God, of course. So when I found out it was a boy and now it's Jack. So Brandy's surviving children love Jack. We met up at Disney, amazing time. And Charlie and Bella were just like, Jack. They love having an alive brother named Jack after their brother who's in heaven. It was just this amazing connection. And Brandy's just one of my people. And she lives in Washington. I live in New Hampshire, where we couldn't be more far apart and
farthest apart.
But yep. But when I'm having a moment, she knows it. And when she's having a moment, I know it. And we just, we'll just say one or two words to each other and it's just like everything is okay. So, so I love it anytime. And I have Jack's picture on the fridge, her Jack, and we talk to him every day. We say hi to him. I'm looking at another picture of him. He's a part of it. And so that's a fun little sidebar as well. I have these connections, these other kids that I feel like I know them. And I never met them.
I know.
Yeah.
I always, because hi, Evelyn. She's always right here with me. So
yes.
Well, when I had her and we lived in Washington, we were like, we knew we were going to have to leave. So we're like,
Yeah.
we can't bury her here. And I wasn't
No.
shipping her body off somewhere, to be buried by grandparents I don't know. And I'm like, and I've
Right.
never experienced death in my entire life other than
Right.
my dog who died a couple of years before. But
Yeah.
so I didn't know, like, just there was something you said when we first started talking about just how fast it happens, like how quickly things went with Molly, how,
Yes.
quickly things went with Gordy, and people, like, the people who haven't gone through this don't realize how quick the death and the burial happen. And in all that space, there's like a million memories and thoughts and emotions that get like balled up in this treasure chest.
Yes.
Because you
Yes.
can't go through it. You have to make decisions. You have to choose what happens. You don't have time to feel what's going on yet.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
then
Absolutely.
it's like the week happened. I mean, that's about the time frame. I feel like somebody dies and they're buried about a week, between all the
Yep.
decisions, trips to the funeral home and all this stuff. And then
Right.
you get home and there's no more people around. And then things just start flooding in. And then
Right.
that's what you're left to
Right.
sift through, basically
Yes.
alone. I mean,
Yes.
of
Yes.
course, unless you have a family.
Yeah, but
But that,
sometimes you're surrounded by people and you're still alone.
oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I can't imagine. Now with baby Gordy, Kenny and I, we had both come out of unhappy marriages when we met. And so my divorce was final, his was not. We were living together, but we weren't ready to get married. Having a baby was not a part of the plan. So we told nobody. No one knew, no one even knew I was pregnant. It was summer. I was getting to the point in August where it was going to be impossible to hide. My mother figured it out. Mothers can tell. She's like, "You're pregnant." And I'm like, "Okay." And so she knew. That was it. We went up to that hospital to deliver our baby alone, and we came home alone, and we put it all away and nobody knew. Sometimes I feel okay about it because Kenny and I could just keep it as ours and we could just grieve together and there was no one telling us how we should feel. I told a handful of people. I told my sister-in-law, and she was beautiful. My mother, when I was delivering, I came home and she had brought a little blue baby blanket and a little baby toy, just like he should have toys, even though he'll never play with. Like, I thought that was the kind. So I have this box in the attic with his little teeny footprints and the little toys and 2 rolls of film that I never developed. We took a bunch of pictures. I should actually see if it's still developable. I hope so. But I had to put it away. And I just dove into life. I got super healthy. I started running a ton and lifting weights and thinking if I made my body perfect, then I could grow a healthy baby. And it was just I look at that grief process and it's your standard child loss reaction from a mom. I took it all in. I made it like it must have been my fault. What can I do differently? How can I fix this? All of those things that go through your head. And Molly, of course, was huge news, newspaper articles, and it was on the news and 1,000 people at her memorial service. It was this complete opposite scenario. But I will say I felt equally lonely in both experiences because it's just me and Molly, just me and Gordy when it comes down to it. You and Evelyn. That's really what it is.
I know. I always feel bad sometimes because, John is her dad and she has siblings, but there's something with the mom and her baby, and it doesn't matter how old your baby is.
No.
It's a special.
Yeah.
It's so special.
Yeah.
Makes me so sad. I hate that babies die, and I hate the children die.
Oh, I know. It's not right. It's just not right. I also really love looking at the ways people honor their children. And, in miscarriage and stillbirth, so many people are quick to say, well, you never had time to get to know that baby, or, well, at least you can have another, like sort of the things they say, trying to make you feel better. The amount of loss and grief associated with those. I have a family member has had repeated miscarriages, some early, some halfway through. And a positive pregnancy test is equally joyful and horrifying because there's no knowledge of how that's going to turn out. Is this going to gut me again, or will I come home with a baby? And I just think that the more that we can share these experiences, the more people see that there's a huge amount of loss and grief in a child you never get to meet. in an alive manner. I mean, I feel like I knew baby Gordy really well. My favorite memory of him, it was an ultrasound, and his little legs and arms, he's going around, he's sucking his thumb. He takes his thumb out of his mouth and grabs his winky. And Kenny's like, yay, like, that's my boy. It was just like the cutest. Oh my God, the whole room laughed. And, and I'd never been pregnant. So I'm looking at this screen and I'm like, wow, that's happening inside of me right now. Like that amazing, like, wow.
It's another world inside of you.
Yep. So my favorite ultrasound memory of Jack was the day we found out he was a boy. And they couldn't get a good view and all this and that. So they said, go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom and I came back in and they got me back up there again. And he was face down, like totally splayed out, face down, hands over his head. I could see his little bum. And we knew he was a boy by then, but he, and the nurse is like, did you have a couple of beers in there? Because he just looked like he was passed out drunk. It was the cutest thing. Just face down. And his face, when he gets upset now, he'll lie down on the ground and he'll actually put his hands by his sides. And he just lays there on his tummy. And I'm like, that's what you looked like the first time I saw you.
Yeah, that's probably muscle memory. Yeah. Kids, the fetal position thing where they'll lay like that because that's what they've done. And
exactly.
What was I going to say? I know those are the things that are so hard to get other people to understand, is that we have made these memories before they're ever born. Yes. Like even a miscarriage, even an early miscarriage, you go to the doctor, you have your first Doppler, your ultrasound, or your what are they? The wand thingy. Like you have all these experiences that create the memories and you see these pictures of them. And then we build pictures in our brain, which is where we start building our future. And we start, when they're this age, she'll have her cousins, or we'll do this on Christmas, or it's like these entire lives in these spheres that we've built.
Yes.
And they're real to us.
Yeah.
And nobody else sees that. So it's kind of just like, I remember before I lost Evelyn and somebody would say, I would hear about somebody having a miscarriage. I'd be like, oh, that's sad. That's it. I don't attach feeling to that. I can't. Right. I can't imagine. I can't believe that babies die, because that defeats the entire natural birth order of our world. Like the natural order things.
It's just wrong.
It's not supposed to happen. And if that can happen, what else can happen now? It opens up this whole terrifying world.
Yeah.
And most people don't want to know that. They don't want to know that.
No. I agree.
And two, with it being the holidays, I know we were kind of talking about that. How are you able? Do you have special traditions that you include Molly and Gordy and your other kids in?
So I never, I found out I was pregnant with Gordy the last week of June, and I delivered him the third week of August. So it was such a short period of time, and there was no major holiday or family get together during that time. It was summer vacation. I'm a school teacher. Kenny and I spent most of our time alone. So there was never a tradition around him. Molly, however, was the holiday queen. January 1st, she would get the new calendar and she would sit down and she would, decorate each holiday on the calendar. And the rule in our house was you can't start talking about the next holiday until you're done with the one that's coming up. So no talking about, St. Patrick's Day until Valentine's Day is over, and no talking about Easter until St. Patrick's Day is over, and no talking about Halloween. Like, you had to, because she would just obsess about them. And the year before she died, we had amazing holidays. And I wonder sometimes if that's why they were so amazing. Like every single holiday in 2015, and then Valentine's Day in 2016, and hers and Gracie's birthdays, they were all wonderful, like really wonderful, which makes me happy because that was our last. We did no holidays. So I came home from unplugging her May 7th, which was a Saturday. May 8th was Mother's Day. And I just put on my Facebook page, do not come here and tell me Happy Mother's Day. Just don't. And nobody did, but it was just too much to even, I was just so angry and just dumbstruck. So Gracie and Kenny and I had sort of a family meeting, and we decided that we were not doing holidays at all. So 4th of July, which Molly loved, we just pulled the shades. We didn't go to fireworks. We had some people over because it was a hot, sunny day, friends of Molly's, like some people close. And we sort of hung out, but it wasn't to celebrate 4th of July. It was just like, we're here to help you be okay. We didn't celebrate, we just pulled the shades. We didn't do Thanksgiving. We ordered Chinese food and watched movies. Like we just couldn't function. That first Christmas, we drove to Florida and we stayed in a hotel, and it was pouring rain and crappy weather, and we just didn't care. But we did nothing. We did nothing the whole first year. The second year was exactly the same. Again, we just didn't want to deal with it. We just avoided them completely. And then we've eased ourselves back in. So we still haven't, there's no Christmas tree in my house. And we were supposed to go to Florida this year, and we're redoing our kitchen. A bunch of things have come up, and it doesn't make sense for us to go. So we just sat here this morning all right, we have to get a Christmas tree. And, Jack has only experienced Christmas being at Disney, and he's little enough to not really have a clue just yet. But we have to get we're going to be here. We can't just not do Christmas. And we sort of both want to do it. Like we all sort of feel like, okay, but I think what we'll do is we'll recreate Christmas so that it won't be as similar as it was. Like I don't think I can pull the Christmas tree decorations down that we always used to use. They're from my childhood. They're like someday, I think some summer day, I would like to take those out and go through them and organize them. But I don't know that I could do that now with the dark and the cold and the actual Christmas holiday.
The lifetime of it.
Yes, exactly. So it's just difficult. They've all been difficult. But so this is the 8th of everything. So Molly died May 7th. So it was the 8th, 4th of July, and the 8th Halloween, and the 8th Thanksgiving. And, so we're over halfway through her life now of her not being here. So Jack gives us an external focus. What can we do for Jack? So we're just going to get a little cute little tree. We're going to put it in this little corner of our living room. We're going to put some lights on it. We'll go buy some decorations that he might like. We'll have a tree, and Santa will come, and we'll do it. I feel incredibly lucky that I didn't have a host of younger siblings that still would need. I'm helping a mom out right now whose daughter just died. Her 15-year-old daughter just died in October, and she's got 2 little boys. So her whole post yesterday was about taking out the decorations and decorating the house, and how awful it was for her. And she had to put on a smile because her little boys, they want to be happy. Yeah. Children, I tell you, siblings in grief, God bless the babies. They want us to be happy. So I consider that a gift in some ways, that I didn't have anyone younger than Molly. And Gracie was old enough that she could say, look, I don't want to do Christmas either. Let's go to the beach. We've gone to Disney a couple of times. We went to Hawaii once. We've just eradicated the holidays as they were. But Jack's getting big enough now to notice. He sees Santa Claus. We're watching all the Christmas movies. We have our little elf on the shelf. Like we have all these things. And those things disappeared for a long time. I took him out last year, the elf on the shelf, and Gracie was like, Mom, Mark is back. I'm like, he is? Gracie's 20, of course she knows. but yeah, so we're easing back into it. But the worst thing you can say to a grieving mother, this is my opinion, but the last thing I need somebody to say to me is, well, come on, it's the holidays. You should be happy. I shouldn't be anything. There's no should in this. If there's a should, it's that I should feel what I'm feeling with no judgment. So if I need to lie in bed all Christmas Day and cry, then that's what I'm going to do. Because to shove that down continually just prevents you from ever getting over it, And so I don't think that will be the case for me. But I give this mother permission. I thanked her thank you so much for sharing how horrible this was for you. Because A, I can relate to it. B, you're sharing it. You're sharing it so others can learn. People like me can commiserate and empathize, and you're getting it out of you. And she messaged me and she's like, I so needed to hear that. All I get is, you're doing fine. You're so strong. You can do it. I don't need cheerleading. I'm like, you don't. You need acknowledgement, And Thanksgiving was hard for her. And I said, make sure you give yourself a full day not to get out of bed. And she sort of sent me some question marks. I'm like, don't get out of bed. Don't get out of bed tomorrow. Stay in bed all day. Invite everyone in, but don't get up. And so she didn't. And she and her sons had this amazing little movie day, and they brought her little treats, and they all cried together, and then they all laughed at a movie together, and she just never got out of bed. And it's, people don't think to say those things. They want us to be who we used to be. You'll never be the same mom you were before Evelyn. How can you be? She's a part of who you are. I can't be the mom I was before Molly or before Gordy because, they existed in my life and then they didn't. So now I'm that mother. And that's who I am now. So, and look at you. Look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're doing this amazing thing.
Trying. So are you. And I love it.
Yeah.
I think too, normalizing though that for you, so it's been 8 years since Molly died, right?
Yep. It'll be 8 years in May. So we're in year 8.
And it's still hard to get through holidays. For me, it's 4 years. And I'm just now feeling that I have the capacity and the energy to like be happy and start because I was a huge, I love holidays. I'm crazy about holidays, but then she died and then I stopped getting out decorations. I didn't want to do that. And I just didn't have the energy. I didn't have the mental wherewithal to do it. I couldn't do it. And I'm just now starting to feel that. And I feel like something my therapist asked me and my husband went through something traumatic after Evelyn died, and he had an affair. And
I'm sorry.
Our therapist is like, how long do you think this is going to take you to work through and get over? And me, not experienced this ever, I'm like, a year. A year. And I always go back to this question because that's what we go to. We think that it's like a year mark is like, we should be okay.
Right.
And hearing that it's still okay, that it's okay that it's 8 years and you still have trouble. Like, that's not a problem. And it's okay.
Because grief is love. Yes. And grief is love. You don't stop loving Evelyn. So how do you stop grieving her loss? Like when I have I've put that little meme up, grief equals love. And when people look at it that way, they can be a bit more understanding. I also use the analogy that I know it takes 9 months to grow a baby. So give yourself at least 9 months to lose the weight, right? Like you're not going to lose 9 months of baby growth in 6 weeks. Give yourself equal time. So not that it's the same because you had only 9 months with Evelyn. But I feel like don't even talk to me about being even remotely normal until 14 years have gone by. And now she's been gone longer than she was here. That's also a huge milestone I've now learned from people that have gotten to that point.
I was just going to say, I wonder if that's it'll be 26 or 27. And then.
Yeah. And then, oh no. But there's no, one of the doctors. So listening to you say 4 years and you're just now to the point. When we knew that Molly wasn't going to wake up, one of the doctors said to us, 5 years. 5 years. And I'm like, 5 years what? Don't even begin to put any pressure on yourselves to be okay for 5 years. And of course, that seemed so long at the time. 5 minutes seemed a long time. And I said, okay. And he said, a traumatic event takes about 5 years. It takes that long to assimilate the event, to process the event, to grieve the event, to be okay for a bit, to relapse, to be okay a little bit more, to relapse again, to process it differently, to add other traumas in. He said 5 years. And it was 5 years when I was finally able. 5 years was when Jack was conceived, right? And so it's easy to say, oh, it's because of Jack, but I also think 5 years. I think that's a logical amount of time. So I say that a lot to newly bereaved moms. Give yourself 5 years,
good.
Don't, And say you say, yes, I'll come to your dinner party. You get to cancel right up until the dinner party. Like,
oh my gosh,
I would say, yes, I want to do something. And then I just couldn't do it. I have wonderful friends. My friend Deb would invite me to concerts that she knew I would like. And I would say yes. And she would say, just so you know, if you don't want to go, my last minute replacement is my sister, or my last minute replacement is, she would always have someone who would celebrate if I went, but would also be psyched I didn't because they'd get to go. And it just took all the pressure off. You know, if I was getting dressed for the concert and then couldn't do it, I could just say I can't do it, and my replacement would go with my friend. Like, no big deal.
That's the best friend that everybody needs when they're grieving.
Yes. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That is the best.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. You've been through so much. Like, I'm going through all your stuff and all your kids and seeing your scar, and like, I can't imagine waking up to that. And
yeah, it was
you've just been through so
horrific.
much, and you're still sharing and smiling and laughing, because that's how we get through it. I guess.
Yep. Yeah. No, it is. It's exactly how we get through it. One of my favorite books in high school was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I don't know if you're familiar with the book or the movie, but
it's about a criminal. I've never read it.
Yeah. Gets arrested. He gets put into a mental hospital. And one of the people in the ward that he's in is this Native American guy they call Chief. And Chief doesn't speak, but as the novel goes along and the story unfolds, he begins to talk to McMurphy, the main character of the story. And one of the things Chief says is, if you lose your laughter, you lose your footing. And I remember being like a 17-year-old high school student reading this book. And, you know, I had child abuse and some things in my life going on. And I thought, this makes total sense. Because when I'm laughing, even if I'm not happy, I'm happy when I'm laughing. Like, I'm laughing at something funny. Like, I'm able to laugh. I never forgot that. So oftentimes for me, levity and humor is how I get through bad things. Sometimes I make inappropriate jokes because I want to laugh. I'm one of those people. I'm getting yelled at and I start laughing, and like, why are you laughing? Oh, I don't know. Because why not?
Because I need to.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. So anyway, you're wonderful.
Thank you so much for being here. I know I could talk to you forever.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Yep.
But yeah. I hope you have an easygoing holiday.
Well, you too.
And just enjoy
same.
Jack.
Yep.
And Gracie.
Yep. Yep.
I'm sure it'll be wonderful.
We'll have a good time. Yeah. Yeah, they're actually, Jack naps in the car. So Gracie went with Kenny. Because if she's in the car with him, then they can do errands. You know, one of them can stay in the car with Jack.
Yeah.
So my kitchen designer made this beautiful wreath for Molly's grave. So one of the things they're doing is going up there and cleaning up her grave a little bit and putting the wreath on it. So, you know, we just incorporate these. And the beautiful thing with Jack is he totally knows Molly. He talks about Molly. Yeah. When he looks, he'll notice her picture. I have a Molly shirt. You know, he's like, your shirt says Molly. You know, like she's a normal part of our family. And it's also a really, you know, good asset. He wasn't here when any of this happened. So it's just, this is what he knows. And it's a great way to include her in our family and not feel bad about it.
I know you didn't have Jack until after Molly, but I know having my girls after Evelyn died was like what got me through.
Yes.
And I had this conversation, I'll try not to keep you too long, but I had this conversation with this woman, Lauren, and she's a baby soul communicator, and she worked in the NICU for like over 20 years. And she had this experience where she started hearing these babies, like as they were leaving or coming to this earth, like in the bodies, like she just... something she has been blessed with this beautiful, like, not skill, gift.
It's like a gift. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm trying to think of the right word. I wonder if as they're coming and going, the souls of the babies that are choosing to come and when they're supposed to come, yes. You know, like in passing, Molly and Jack knew each other, you know,
right.
high-fived each other.
I know.
You know, like,
yeah.
You know,
like, yeah, if Molly like adjusted him. All right, get ready, Jack. Gonna jump in soon. You know, like, yeah. I bet.
I'm meeting all these women who do these amazing things, and it's just wonderful. So
yeah, it is wonderful.
I'm so happy that you were able to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy that you do this. Yep, exactly. So, yeah. Well, you need to have a wonderful Christmas too. Take care of yourself. Do fun things.
Oh yeah.
And take your time if you need it.
We just did cookies, and that was a nightmare.
Yeah.
I want to do anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that was like my one thing is letting my younger one put frosting all over the table. And so
yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it's all good. Yeah. Someday you'll miss it. Oh, I miss those days. It's like, oh.
I know.
Yeah.
It's
Jack was awake from 1 to 4 last night.
In
the
morning?
Up itchy. Yeah, then he peed his diaper, so I had to change him. And then he was thirsty, wanted water. Then he was hungry. Then he was itchy, so we put lotion on. Then he wanted to watch Stinky and Dirty on his tablet. So we got the tab. We co-sleep. So, I mean, I just laid there and dozed on and off while he was going through all his machinations. But 3 hours in the middle of the night. So, and then he slept till 9 o'clock. I had to get up and go work. So, yeah, that was no fun. But that's okay. But someday I'm going to miss it. My point is someday he'll have hairy legs and a deep voice, and he'll slam the door to his room, and I'll be like, oh, I used to snuggle with him. So I try to remember that. Yeah. So
we'll enjoy it all, even the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. Right. Exactly.
Well, it was nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too, Valen. Thank you so much.
See you later.
Yep. Keep up the good work.
I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to the Pregnancy Loss Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode. I created a guide on 20 ways to celebrate your angel baby. It gives you 20 amazing ways to celebrate their birthdays or ways to just remember them on any given day. If you want to download it, head over to valenweb.com/resources and click the link. I hope you guys have a great week. See you next time.